go ahead and get started. Tonight we're going to talk about presenting technical data. If you have complex technical stuff you want to present to an audience, what are some techniques you can use to make that effective? We'll start with a definition. What is technical data? We'll get back to our objective and our conclusion focus, because when you present complicated stuff, you want to remember these fundamentals. The last thing you want to do when you're presenting something that's going to confuse your audience anyway is forget to focus on your objective and forget to use the important conclusion stuff that we talked about last week. We'll talk about PowerPoint design, how you can simplify that. PowerPoint competition. I consider this competition between you and PowerPoint. So you want your audience to focus on you as the important presenter, the person who knows this material. You don't want your audience looking at PowerPoint when they should be looking at you. So I call that PowerPoint competition. We'll think of some ways to avoid that. Transitions from one subject to the next. How to keep your audience with you. We'll talk about visual aids, pie charts, bar charts, line graphs. Jargon. How to avoid using jargon that might confuse your audience. A few content enhancements. How to spruce up your presentation. We'll talk about as you prepare for your presentation next week. And we'll go over the technical presentation assignment discussion, and then we'll do the team graph exercise. So, let's dive right into it, shall we? Definition. What is technical data? Let me just kill the suspense, tell you what I think the definition is. The definition I go with: anything that might confuse your audience. Anything your audience might not understand. Complicated analysis, graphs, charts, engineering data. What kind of technical data do you all present? What kind of things do you work with that your audience might get confused by? Stocks, finance, yes.
I was going to say financial statements.
Financial statements? Yes. What's your name again?
Letitia.
You got your hair done, right?
Yeah.
Looks good.
Thank you.
Fantastic. All right, Letitia. All right, so you present on financial statements? All right, so ratios, numbers, things that could be confusing. You want to use all the techniques we've talked about up until now. This is the conclusion, this is the takeaway. Don't get lost in the numbers, get focused on the takeaway. What else? What other sort of technical presentations? Okay?
Technical presentation.
Anything you do that we could touch on while we go through this material? What kind of presentations do you give that might confuse your audience from a technical aspect?
I guess financial statement, as you said.
Okay, financial statements, all right. So financial statements is a big one. Anything that your audience might not understand, we want to use some of these techniques to help them understand. Remember we talked about an objective? You're up here trying to accomplish something. You want them to understand these financial statements. You want them to see that maybe they should invest in this company. You want them to see maybe that we're on the verge of a recession, so that they should take drastic action. You want to stand up here with a purpose. You don't want to forget that just because you're throwing in a lot of numbers. Forces the speaker, as we said, to try to accomplish something, to monitor your audience, and to adjust as you go through your presentation. We still want to use all that good stuff that we brought to our presentations last week. Similarly, we want to think about our conclusions. We're not just analysts who report numbers. We don't just fire ratios at the audience. You all are MBA students. You've probably accomplished a lot in your career even before you got to the MBA level. People are going to look to you to tell them what the data means, what the conclusion is, the takeaway. And so we want to use all the techniques we talked about the last two sessions about how we can clearly show our audience this is the takeaway, this is the conclusion. Some ways we can do that verbally, there's some ways we can do that non-verbally. We still want to use all of that stuff. Okay. We talked about using conclusions, and we talked about something that happens in the beginning, middle, and end of most presentations in terms of the audience's attention. Can someone summarize that for us? In terms of the beginning, middle, and end of our presentation, when is our audience focused on us? When might they be zoning out a little bit? And how can we use that to our advantage with this conclusion framework?
Well, for in the beginning, you state your conclusion, make sure you go through it, make sure they understand that this is what they should be getting out of the presentation. In the middle, people usually zone out, daydream kind of thing, and at the end, you kind of get it, reinforce the beginning.
Yes, okay, all right, that's perfect. The only unspoken thing that you didn't say was that the audience's attention is high at the beginning
Okay.
and high at the end. So take advantage of that opportunity to assert your conclusions. All right, that is our objective review, our conclusion review. Let's talk about PowerPoint design. Do you all spend a lot of time working with PowerPoint? Is anyone new to PowerPoint? A little bit new, a little bit new? How about the rest of you? A little bit new on PowerPoint? We could talk about PowerPoint at length, but I've pulled out a few things that I think are important, a few golden nuggets about how to use PowerPoint that I've seen over the years as I've coached students and coached clients. And we'll focus on those things, and if you have questions about other details of PowerPoint, you can definitely ask me. Engaging, undistracting template. Now, you want a template that engages your audience, so choose a template that is a little bit enticing, but not to the point where it distracts your audience. Choose a template that engages, but doesn't distract your audience. Does everyone know what I mean by a template? Like the background of the slides? This template is white with a little bit of cloud on it. I could also use a template that's yellow. I could use a template that kind of has a gold outline. And when you look on PowerPoint, you'll see a variety of templates that you could choose. Choose one that is engaging, but not too flashy that it distracts your audience. Concise, incomplete text. So, when you use PowerPoint, I want you to use concise, incomplete text, such as these titles. Why would I tell you to use concise, incomplete text? David.
You don't want them to read off the PowerPoint, you're gonna say what the thought is.
Yes, exactly. You don't want them reading your whole presentation, because then they're going to be reading your presentation and not looking at you. Also, it's going to be hard to follow what's on your slide if you have full paragraphs. Instead, you want concise, incomplete text, something to guide your audience. Show them where you're going. Right now, I'm talking about concise, incomplete text. You know that, you can follow my presentation, now you can just focus on me and let me explain to you why it's valuable. I like a 5x3 rule. No more than 5 bullet points down, no more than 3 words across. It's not a hard and fast rule. If you need to violate it, go ahead and violate it. But if you find yourself in constant violation of the 5x3 rule, you better have a good reason.
No more than 3.
Yeah, I like 3 words across. See how there's 3 words here? 5 bullet points. Any more than that might be too much information on one slide. Use it on the next slide. Or think about how you can make it more concise and incomplete. Just something to guide your audience. And I don't follow that rule. You'll see multiple examples of how I violate that a little bit, but I use that as a good rule of thumb. Don't be a slave to it, but use it as a rule of thumb. Parallel structure. We talked about parallel structure in the essays that you submitted today. Can someone refresh us? What is parallel structure? Letitia.
I remember that it has to be.
Anyone? Alright, well I hope you remembered it for your written essays that you submitted today. Parallel structure means each subheading starts with the same part of speech. These are all nouns. They're a thing. This is not complete, this is not great parallel structure, it's okay parallel structure. These are all nouns, so that's fine. You don't want a noun, and then something else. Remember I gave you some examples in class 1. I said, using an objective forces you to try, monitor, and make adjustments when your audience doesn't understand. And your audience didn't, so as you're reading that, you're like, try, monitor, make adjustments when your audience doesn't understand. It's the third bullet point, just throws you for a loop. Put everything in a way that's easy for your audience to absorb visually and quickly comprehend mentally. So parallel structure with these bullet points. Customized slides. What do I mean by customized slides? This stuff down here, Mercy College, communication processes, spring 2016. This frames it for your audience. In case you've all forgotten, we are here at Mercy College, and we are at communications class. Now it's a little being facetious now because we've been here 4 times, but what if I'm standing up giving a presentation, you've never seen me before? I have 10 minutes to get you to focus on this thing I'm trying to sell. It helps your audience remember what your presentation is about. It also just looks a little weird if you don't have it. It looks unprofessional. It looks like you just grabbed a white template and pasted some bullet points on. I like a customized slide. Topic in top line. Now, you've heard me say conclusions are the important thing when you're doing a presentation. But I'm going to tell you one thing about PowerPoint. I recommend that this top line be your topic. You don't want to pick the conclusion right here. You want an engaging, undistracting template with customized slides, and you want the topic in the top line, PowerPoint design. And now your audience is ready to absorb the information, ready to absorb the potential conclusions or the things that you're going to say about that topic. Make sense? All right, topic and top line. Let's take a look at some examples and think about what you like or don't like about these slides based on these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. All right, take a look at this slide. Tell me if you like it. Tell me if you don't like it. If so, why or why not? Denilsa doesn't like it. What don't you like about it?
The topic, too much words to crowd.
Sorry, one more time?
Is too many words.
Too many words on the whole thing?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, too many words
I see something
everywhere.
like that and I don't feel like interesting, like I don't want to read it, like.
It gives you a headache just looking at it. I'm not even going to bother reading these paragraph bullet points. Fair point. I agree with you. These are paragraphs. What else? Maxine?
It's hard to read because of the text. It's, against the black it's good, and then it goes against the
Yep,
black
the
color.
color.
It's tough.
Color bleeds over into this kind of enticing picture. It's not bad. You can draw our attention, but since it bleeds over, we just can't read it. So not only does it give Denilsa a headache to even think about reading it, once you try reading it, it's very difficult. What else? What about parallel structure? Now, it starts, each bullet point, with lead, assisted, respond, performed, managed. Now, if we look at just those first words, this assisted, respond, so this is in, so, all right. There's a lot of weird things going on here. The first thing is this top bullet point. This is a job title. All right, this is a student who did a resume presentation. Let me tell you about this job I had, and this was the slide at the Department of Buildings Development Hub. This person was the lead technical intern. That was the job description. And these are the things, that was the job title, and these are the descriptions. These are the things that the student did. The problem is, this is the same format as everything that follows it. So it gets confusing. We think that these are all the same thing. We expect them to be in a parallel structure. The first thing that confuses us is the job title is in the same format as the job description. So visually, we don't understand what's going on. Second thing, if we get to the 1, 2, 3, 4 different job description points, we've got assisted, respond, performed, and managed. See how assisted, performed, and managed are in past tense? Respond is in present tense. Nuance of parallel structure. Anything else on this slide before we move on? Alright, let's move on. A couple others to look at. How do we like this slide?
I think it's much better, but it doesn't really do much for you because it just words. It doesn't have any meaning to it.
Okay, we'll get to that in a minute. What do you think is better about it? What's good?
It's cleaner, it's easier to read.
Alright, cleaner, easier to read. What else do we have going on that might be good about this slide?
Use it as an outline reference point.
Yeah, use it as an outline. We've got these customized points down here. We've got Small Business Administration here. We know we're talking about the 504 loan program. We've got something that looks like a topic in the top line, credit underwriting considerations. These are the things that the Small Business Administration considers when underwriting credit for the 504 loan program. And we've got 4 things. These are all nouns: experience, credit, collateral, revenue. Now what's left is what David pointed out. We don't know what all those mean, but as a presenter, I can fill that information in for you. I can give you this much on the slide, and then I can talk to you about experience, credit, collateral, revenue, whatever I need to do. So that's a fair criticism, David, but I think a talented presenter can fill it in. I don't want to be competing with my slide. I don't want you reading everything about experience. I want to be the one to deliver that information to you. Alright, let's look at something else. I guess that was it. Okay, so there's those 2. Any questions on PowerPoint design? Those are a few nuggets that I think are valuable as you're designing your PowerPoint slides. Let's talk about this idea of PowerPoint competition. So I mentioned earlier, I want your audience focused on you. I want your audience watching you deliver your message. I don't want your audience to be too distracted by PowerPoint. A couple of ways you can make that happen. 1, talk to the audience. Face the audience, talk to the audience. You do not want to have your back to the audience, looking at the slide, reading the slide. It's almost like you're bowing down to the slide saying, this is important. Alright, I can't grab your attention the same way if I have my back to you the whole time. This is just a reference point for you, and I'm talking to you. For some people that have a problem going back and forth between the slide and the audience, sometimes I'll see folks, their head will just turn 50 times a minute while they're giving a presentation. I recommend they use this touch, turn, talk technique. This is something developed by 3M, and the 3 components: touch, turn, talk. Touch is click to the next slide on the clicker, so that's touch. Turn means turn to the slide and look at what's on the slide, and turn back. And talk means deliver your take on it. Talk. Now, this method dictates that you do all of those 3 things individually. You don't do any of them at the same time. You do not touch, click to the next slide, start talking, touch, turn, talk, while your head is turning back to the audience. You just break them up, one at a time. Does that make sense? So here I am. I'm talking to you about talk to the audience. It's important that you're facing the audience. Do not have your back to the audience. You can gain your audience's attention that way. The next thing I'm gonna talk about is touch, turn, talk. This is a way to remind yourself what's coming next in the presentation. You don't have to move your head back and forth. Blank screen, another technique you can use. On a remote clicker, there's often a button, you can blank the screen. So what are you gonna do now? You kind of have to look at me. Maybe I'll use this technique when I get to an important takeaway or conclusion. Say, all right, that's just the technical aspect. Now let's talk about what this means. Blank screen, very, very powerful technique for gaining your audience's attention. Stand to the left. So I'm standing to the left right now. Why would I suggest that the presenter stand to the left of the PowerPoint slides?
Because you're not in the way and you can glance at it if you need to.
Okay, yeah, so I definitely I don't want to stand here, for sure. All right, but why would I want to stand to the left versus standing to the right? All right, which direction do we read? Maxine? Left to right. How might that help you as a presenter by standing to the left of the PowerPoint slides?
Keep everyone focused on you because you're trying to read or pay attention to the PowerPoint. Data isn't up there.
So you start reading left to right. So as you absorb this visual field, your eyes will gravitate towards me first, and then you'll read left to right, and then as you get to the end of the sentence, your eyes will automatically come back. We've been conditioned, left to right, left to right. So your eyes will naturally rest on me when you start reading and as you finish reading. And that's what I want. I want you to focus on me, quickly glance at the concise titles, and then I want your eyes back on me. Entrance effects. These points I'm using where each heading comes in when I click it, that's an entrance effect. Have you all used entrance effects in the past? Very, very powerful. Suppose I don't have entrance effects, and I have to put everything on the slide at once, and I'm trying to talk to you about entrance effects, and your focus is here, overture the slide. Oh, what does that mean? I wonder when he's going to talk about that. I'm confused. But I don't even want you thinking about that. I want your focus on entrance effects, so I can talk to you about that. Very powerful technique. Last thing, if you can't use entrance effects, I suggest you, and you have to bring everything in all at once. In that case, there's going to be a lot of information that your audience is going to be intrigued by and want to read while you want them focusing on you, giving your presentation. In that case, I'd recommend you use a technique I call overture the slide. Overture the slide means give the audience an overview of your entire slide very quickly, and then draw their attention to the points that you want to discuss. So if I had to bring in this whole slide, I might say, we're going to talk about how you can avoid PowerPoint competition. I'm going to talk to you about talking to the audience. We're going to go over the touch, turn, talk technique. I'll show you a blank screen technique. I'll tell you why it's important to stand to the left. We'll talk about entrance effects. And lastly, we'll talk about overturing the slide. So that's where we're going in this slide. Let me talk first about talk to the audience. Now, I give you that information about talk to the audience, blah, 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 and move forward. Just that initial overview will often satisfy your audience's curiosity about where you're going. So you can tell them where they're going so they're not wondering. They're not distracted while they're trying to listen, while you're trying to talk to them about touch, turn, talk. Make sense? All right, I think I've got some examples here that help us think about talking, think about avoiding PowerPoint competition. Let's look at this PowerPoint example. We've got another slide from the Small Business Administration about the 504 loan program, talking about eligible project costs. There's a lot of information here. There's eligible costs under real estate, machinery, soft costs, and refinancing, and information among each of them. This is an example of a lot of information thrown at your audience at one time. I would suggest you think about entrance effects with a slide like this. Maybe you would want to do it something like, in a way like this. Got your customized slide, your topic in the top line. Bring them in, talk about real estate. Then talk about machinery and equipment. Now let's talk about soft costs. Now let's talk about refinancing. Okay, so that is probably better than bringing them all in at once, right? But we still have the problem of, I bring in this whole real estate, and I'm trying to talk about existing buildings, while my audience is wondering, what's gonna happen with the renovation? So maybe, what if I brought them in one at a time? Real estate. Real estate is an eligible project cost. Let me first tell you about how existing buildings can be a cost. Now let me tell you about how renovations can be a cost. What if I brought them in one at a time like that? Do you like that? You like them brought in as chunks? All of this together, or one at a time?
One at a time.
Alright. Got one vote for one at a time. And 6 abstentions. Now, how about though, if I did it like this? I said, I'm gonna give you an overview of the eligible project costs for this program. We're gonna talk first about real estate, then I'm gonna talk to you about machinery and equipment, then I'm gonna talk about soft costs, then I'm gonna talk about how refinancing is a eligible cost. Now let's go back then to real estate. There are 2 things under real estate, blah, 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 blah. 2 things under machinery and equipment, et cetera, et cetera. Soft costs. Now let's talk about refinancing. What if I brought it in that way? I like that even better. Gives me a chance to overview with the 4 main points on that slide, and then bring the detailed information in as I'm ready to talk about it. Something to think about. Alright, what else do we have? Transitions. So, nothing confusing here. I'm just trying to talk about how we can transition from one topic to another. We were talking about marketing. Now we're going to talk about finance. Or we were talking about project costs. Now we're going to talk about HR policies. So as you go from one topic to another, you just need to keep your audience with you. You need to use some techniques to guide them through the presentation in a way that's going to make them focus on the important points. I like a triple L strategy. As you're going through these transitions, I suggest you lead your audience, link items, and even label a transition. So how have I got this? It's going to take a minute for me to explain this. The triple L strategy in order of effectiveness. So I think it's best if you can lead your audience through. Second best if you can link one topic to the next. And third best if you can just label that you're going through a transition. What I mean by that? I start by talking about marketing, and then I go to finance. I say, alright, we were talking about marketing, now we're going to talk about finance. Just by saying now we're going to talk about finance, I have labeled that transition. Seems basic, but it can be pretty abrupt if you don't do it. If you don't label it. You don't say, alright, now we're going to go to the next topic. That's all I mean by labeling a transition. Saying now we're going to move on to the next thing. It's easy to forget when you're up here and you're nervous. What's even better than labeling a transition is if you can link topic A to topic B. You can say, alright, we've talked about marketing. Now, we need to think about how we can support that marketing, how we can fund it. So we need to talk about finance. So I've drawn a link between the marketing material I just discussed and the finance material that I'm going to discuss. Now what's even better than that is if you can lead into the next topic. Talking about marketing, yada 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 yada, marketing. Now there may be an interesting question going on in your minds when I talk about marketing. And that question is, how could we pay for all this? Right? You were thinking that, right? So, Very well. I will go on to our next topic, which is finance. If you can allude to it before you even get there. I call that leading into the next topic. Any questions? If you're transitioning speakers, so you have 3 people talking, I would use the triple L strategy as well. Say, I've talked about marketing, now I'm going to give the clicker to Maxine, and she's going to talk about finance. Seems basic, but again, it can be very abrupt if you don't use some sort of transition, labeling, linking, or leading technique. I want to talk now about trackers that can help us ease the transition as we're going from one subject to the next and keep our audience with us. A tracker is something we could have included in PowerPoint design. It's a visual, the top of the slide, the bottom of the slide, that indicates where we are in our presentation. Suppose I'm going to talk about 3 things: potential profit, cost, and compliance, and I've got the middle one highlighted. That's an indication that now in this slide I'm talking about cost. Let me show you an example and it will become very clear if it's not already. So I'm talking about the 504 loan program, Small Business Administration. Right now I'm talking about potential profit. Alright, now I'm talking about the cost of this program. So I worked through my presentation, now I'm talking about the compliance aspect. Now I can get complicated underneath here, I can give you lots of facts and figures, but you're going to know that this all has to do with compliance. So this is another powerful tool you can use. So you've got your intriguing but undistracting template. You've got it customized with the Small Business Administration logo. You know, you're talking about the 504 loan program. We've got the topic in the top line, application items needed. And we've got a tracker at the top to guide us through the overview of this presentation. You add it all up, and you can talk about some pretty complex data without your audience getting lost. All right. Any questions about that before we move on to visual aids?
You could also use that for transitioning slides, correct? Like, or slide topics, I should say.
Use the triple L strategy?
No, the tracker. Like, if let's say you're gonna talk about profit potential first, and then you go through it and have your
Whatever topics you want up there in the tracker. However would be best for you to visually indicate where you are in a presentation. All right, let's talk about some visual aids. We'll talk about the main ones. Tables, pie charts, bar charts, line graphs. I'm going to suggest to you, before we get too far into this, that choosing a visual aid will be based on your decision of what's important in the data. All right, what conclusion or interpretation are you drawing from the data? That's going to inform you as to which conclusion or which visual aid you want to choose. Tables, not as much. Tables just show data, specific numbers. They don't show trends up and down. They don't show size comparisons. If for some reason you just need the numbers in your presentation, you could choose it. You might use a table. But these other 3 will tell you something. There will visually, there would be, let me put it this way, there'd be a reason why you would choose these based on your conclusion. Ken, you all fill this in a little bit for me. Can you tell me under what circumstances you might use a pie chart? What might you be trying to illustrate if you're using a pie chart? Amanda?
Percentages?
Percentages, yes. So percentages of a whole. In addition to percentages of a whole, I might say one segment to a whole. If you have 8 little pieces of the pie that are all relatively the same, the pie chart wouldn't show the size difference or the percentage difference so effectively. But if you have one piece of the pie that's really huge compared to the rest, pie chart could illustrate that. How about bar charts? Guess where I was going with this one. Visual comparisons. And line graphs, what do line graphs tend to show?
Trend?
Trends over time. Outstanding. Let me give you some examples. We'll think about how each of these visual aids shows us that thing. This is just a table. Again, it doesn't show us trends, doesn't show us comparisons, it's just the numbers. So it doesn't show us a lot, but if for some reason you have to use a table, there are some ways you can spruce it up. See how this table has the years in the horizontal column slightly highlighted in color? Similarly, the countries at the top row are highlighted. And you see how it alternates between slightly darker, slightly lighter, slightly darker, slightly lighter. Makes it a little bit easier for your audience. Spruce it up just a little bit that way, but still, we can't see comparisons, we can't see trends. Table doesn't show us any of that stuff. So let's look at a pie chart and see what it shows us. Check out this pie chart. What does it tell us? What does this pie chart say right away? Yeah, tell us, man. Why did I choose this chart? What am I trying to really hammer home?
First quarter earnings were higher than any other.
Yeah, first quarter earnings just jump out at you. It's a huge piece of the pie, it's more than half. Now, there are a couple other things that this data shows, this data set shows. Other things going on that I could have articulated a different way. But look closely at it. What other conclusions might you pull from that data? What are the other couple of stories that are going on in this data set? Dude,
Sales decreased from beginning to end of the year.
we got a downward trend. All right, if I wanted to show a downward trend, what kind of visual aid would I use? Line graph. Okay, so my point in showing you this is the importance of first quarter sales. I've probably got some conclusion related to first quarter sales being huge. I'm not going to give you the conclusion about the declining trend over the year. The other thing I see going on with this is that second quarter sales are pretty significant. They're in fact bigger than third quarter and fourth quarter combined. If I wanted to tell that story, I might use a bar graph. I might give you something like this. I might say, all right, look, we all know first quarter sales are huge. But let's not forget how second quarter sales are significant. They're twice as big as either third quarter or fourth quarter. In fact, they're bigger than third quarter and fourth quarter combined. I'm able to show the size of second quarter relative to the third quarter a little bit more effectively in the bar graph. And as I mentioned, if I want to show a trend, or Amanda mentioned, if I want to show a trend, I'm going to use a line graph to show the downward motion. Make sense? Questions? Bati? No questions. All right. How do you present a graph? I've got a method I recommend you use. I find that when you're presenting material on a graph, it's so tempting to get into the complicated nuances right away. It's so tempting to prove the intricate details of a graph. And you may be very familiar, probably very familiar with this, because you spent all night working on it. It's your job. You want to jump into the details. What I always suggest is you use a process to help you remember that this is the first time your audience is seeing this graph, and they need a minute to absorb the basics. So I suggest you present a graph by first articulating the title, second, explaining the axes, third, telling your audience the key takeaway, and then lastly, elaborating as necessary. So title, just say it. Say the title of the graph. Your audience has to read it. The only question is, are they going to read it while you're talking about something else? Read it with them. Axes. What's on the horizontal or vertical axes? What's on the horizontal axes? Is this months, years? Is this profit levels? Tell them what it is. Your audience needs that information. Then, tell them your key takeaway. It's important that they understand what your key takeaway is, because there's a lot of takeaways they could draw from any one graph. Just the graph we just mentioned, or the data we just looked at, with the pie chart. There are different takeaways the audience could have. They need you to articulate what is the key one. Once you've done that, then you can elaborate into the details. Let me do this take method for you. I'm going to show you this graph on sales. On the axes, we have first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, and fourth quarter. Key takeaway from this data set is that the first quarter sales are dominant. First quarter sales are more than half of our entire year's sales. Let me elaborate on some other points as well. We can also see a declining trend in sales as we go from first quarter to second quarter, or first quarter to fourth quarter. And I would also note that second quarter is very sizable. Well, let's think about some opportunities we may have to grow in that area. Take method. Title, axes, key takeaway, further elaboration. Questions on that? All right, let's do a little section on jargon. When you're talking about your field, something that's near and dear to you, something you may have worked on for years and years, you may be tempted to throw in jargon that confuses your audience. So what is jargon? Let's start with that question. Jargon. Anyone? Alright, well, jargon is some sort of technical term associated with your field. It's a term that you understand because you work in that field, but people who don't understand. So you don't want to use those terms if your audience is not going to understand them. It's an example of jargon. Can someone give me an example from their field? Talked about some accounting statements. What if you were to say EBIT, NOPAT, inventory turnover ratio? If you start throwing out stuff like that, your audience is like, what are you talking about? It's going to confuse your audience. And you don't want to confuse your audience. When you confuse your audience, they don't say, oh, that person confused me, they must be really good at their job, I'm going to vote for them or invest in their company or do what they say. They're going to say, that person confused me, I don't trust them, I don't like them. It obscures the meaning when you use this jargon, distracts your audience if they have to stop you and say, hey, what does EBIT mean? And you have to explain EBIT, explain financial statements. If you're not prepared, that could be a long conversation. A distraction when you have limited time to try to affect your audience. Lack strength. Unknown is unimportant. If you say something your audience doesn't understand how important it is in your mind, they're not going to think it's the same importance level that you do. I have a jargon elimination strategy. Let me first mention before I go on to this that I say jargon and expert understanding. Expert understanding, what I mean by that is you may say things that are not necessarily jargon, but because of your industry you understand them in a certain way, and that might confuse your audience. You might say cash flow if you're talking about financial statements, and you have a certain understanding of how that works as it relates to your field, but your audience may not understand what you mean when you say cash flow. I have a jargon elimination strategy. I call it the Triple E jargon elimination strategy. It consists of doing three things: exposing jargon, figuring out where it is, and eliminating that jargon from your presentation, or explaining it. You may not be able to eliminate all the jargon from your presentation, but if you can't, you can explain it. If your audience has to know what EBIT means, then you can stop and explain EBIT. But think about that beforehand and think about how that's going to work with your conclusion. Triple E jargon elimination strategy. I have a quick exercise I like to do on this jargon elimination strategy. It is a sports example, an example from a basketball game that happened a year or so ago. And I like this example for a number of reasons. One, Because basketball is ultimately not rocket science. It comes down to some simple fundamentals. But if I throw a lot of jargon into explaining basketball to you, it can sound confusing. The other thing I like about using this example is if I have a few sports fans in the room, they will say, yes, that is exactly the way a basketball game should be described, and I know exactly what you mean when you say all those terms. And then I'll have half of the class that just has no idea what's going on with this fairly simple concept. So do I have a few basketball fans in the room? Alright, got some basketball fans. So, the basketball fans will help us understand the jargon that's being used in the description of this data. And then we'll think about how we could present the same data in a way that is free of jargon. So let me go through each of these points, each of these things that happened in this basketball game. Let's look for where the jargon is, and let's think about how we can rephrase it in a way that does not include jargon. So I'll read each point, and then we'll go through each point after I get done with everything. Alright, so this is a basketball example, Miami Heat versus Brooklyn Nets. On April 8th, 2014, Miami hosted Brooklyn in one of the last games of the regular season. April 8th, 2014, Miami hosted Brooklyn, last game of the regular season. Brooklyn had won all 3 previous regular season games. Miami initially used size advantage to attack the paint. Miami's LeBron James and Chris Bosh both got into foul trouble early in the third quarter and relied more on perimeter shooting. Miami's James and Bosh combined were 0 of 7 in three-point attempts. With the inside threat removed, Brooklyn's Mason Plumlee guarded LeBron James, Miami's LeBron James, aggressively and blocked LeBron's would-have-been game-winning shot with 2.1 seconds remaining in the game. Brooklyn won 88-87. Alright, let's go back, each point. Where's the jargon and how can we eliminate it? Eliminate it in a way that would lead our audience to what would probably be our conclusion. Let's talk about this first one. On April 8th, 2014, Miami hosted Brooklyn in one of the last games of the regular season. Where's the jargon? Is there jargon? How can we get rid of it? Man.
I don't think there's jargon, but if there is, maybe Miami hosted Brooklyn, and it could be the game took place in Brooklyn's arena.
Okay, hosted. Okay, hosted might be, but I think, does everyone, even if you don't, does everyone understand what hosted means?
Yeah. That's why I said I don't think there is, but if there was, then that would be what I would.
Okay, how about maybe regular season?
Uh,
Okay, so what is the regular season? That's potential jargon,
yeah.
but also what comes after the regular season. That might be a little bit the playoffs. That might be a little bit this expert understanding. So you might need to explain a regular season that's happening, differentiate that from the playoffs, and also we're getting ready for the playoffs. There's an excitement in the air. That's why this game may have some serious consequences. Point 2. Brooklyn had won all 3 previous regular season games. Any jargon or expert understanding there? Regular season? Okay. Maybe how about a little momentum going on? Brooklyn had won all 3, and this is the last game of the regular season. If Miami can't win this one, what chance do they have in the playoffs? So we've got Brooklyn. Maxine's not with me? Go ahead.
No, I mean, is that actually jargon, or that's just having an understanding of the game? To
I call that
understand
expert understanding.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's not technically jargon, I call it expert understanding. So I'd say Brooklyn's got a little momentum. They've won all 3 regular season. Miami's worried. Are they going to be able to beat Brooklyn in the playoffs? Well, beating them tonight would go a long way in saying that they can. Alright, point 3. Miami initially used size advantage to attack the paint. Got some jargon there? Are you a basketball fan, David?
Not really.
Not really? Okay, do you know what attack the paint means?
No.
Alright, so can someone explain what attack the paint and how size advantage works? Amanda?
Attack the paint is like anywhere within that, I guess, within.
The painted area?
Yeah, but there's a thing, there's a name for it, right?
The paint, I guess the painted area. The name is the paint, yeah. Okay,
And
so,
why on the size advantage, so if somebody is, I guess, under the rim and they're taller, they can catch the ball. They can catch the ball.
okay, okay, so the paint is this painted area that is close to the basket.
Mhm.
I think that's the way to explain the paint to someone who has no idea. It's an area close to the basket. And if you have a size advantage, you're better able to score those close range shots because you can just jump for the rim, do the short range shots. So Miami initially used their size advantage because they have taller players to shoot close range shots. That's a non-jargon, non-expert understanding way to explain it. Next, we have Miami's LeBron James and Chris Bosh both got into foul trouble early in the third quarter and relied more on perimeter shooting. Where's Letitia? Yes, so foul trouble and perimeter shooting are the two things we need to explain to the non-basketball fans. Can you explain foul trouble to us, Letitia? Letitia?
When they,
Then another player.
yeah, like when you do something to another player and it's counted against you.
While they're trying to shoot.
Okay,
Or
yes,
when they're in
yes,
possession of the ball.
yes, okay. Fatih, does that explanation of foul trouble resonate with you?
Yep.
Yeah, did you understand how they explain foul trouble?
Yeah, I know the false one.
Oh, you know foul trouble. Or why don't you explain foul trouble to me?
If you have like a 5, if you did already 5 foul, you're on the line, and
Yes.
the next one you're gonna go out the game.
Okay, so you have 5 fouls, you go out of the game. Alright, so that's just the definition of foul trouble and understanding it. Question I would ask the basketball fans though is how does that affect the way the game is played?
Sorry.
How does that affect the way the game is played?
With the foul trouble,
Yes.
because they're key assets to getting the ball in the rim, in the paint.
Oh, okay, so if your players foul out, then you could lose your key assets. But if you're in foul trouble, how does that change the game?
It changes the position and how you can
You
play.
can't play aggressive.
Yes, you can't play aggressively, you can't attack the paint as much. So they didn't attack the paint, they didn't use those short range shots, they relied more on perimeter shooting. Perimeter shooting is long range shooting. And how well did it work out? Miami's James and Bosh combined were 0 of 7 in 3-point attempts. Where's the jargon there and how can we explain that? 0 and 7, so what does that mean? 0 and 7 in 3-point attempts.
Didn't make any
They didn't make any, what kind of shots?
3-pointer shots.
And what, does anyone not know what 3-pointer shots are? Who doesn't know what 3-pointer shots are? Oh, okay, do you know what 3-pointers are?
Not really.
Yeah, it's, alright, so she said 3-pointers, and you're like, what do you mean by 3-pointers? What are 3-pointers?
So 3-pointers, there's like an outline after the paint, and there's like a big kind of oval that you shoot from, and it's worth 3 points, so it's outside the paint.
So they're long range shots. Okay, so they couldn't make those short range shots, they had to use long range shots, and it didn't work. They missed all 7 of them. Another piece of potential jargon, expert understanding, are these two names here, James and Bosh. Who are these guys? Are they just players? Are they any players? Could it be anyone? Or is it important, are their names important to understanding how this story developed? They are?
Yeah,
How is it important?
they're key players.
They're key players. They're not only key players, arguably the best player in the world, LeBron James. You're in danger of losing your best player, who is the best player in the world, so you have to change the strategy. You changed the strategy, and it didn't work out so well. With the inside threat removed, Brooklyn's Mason Plumlee guarded Miami's LeBron James aggressively and blocked LeBron's would have been game-winning shot with 2.1 seconds remaining in the game. the potential jargon here is who is Mason Plumlee and who is LeBron James. Does anyone know who Mason Plumlee is? Yeah, no. He's a nobody. He's a punk kid from Duke. A rookie. Blocks the shot of the best player in the world. Talk about creating some momentum as we go into the playoffs. And Brooklyn won 88-78. So let's look at how we would present this free of jargon. We might say, let me tell you about the Miami versus Brooklyn game, April 8th, 2014. Here's what happened. The conclusion is that Brooklyn won by limiting and then overcoming Miami's offense and thus increased momentum. Now, how did that happen? Well, Miami's star players, I'm not going to drop names, I'm just going to say star players, successfully used their size advantage to score those close range shots. But then something happened, foul trouble. This is something I need to explain to you because it's important to how it changed everyone's strategy in the game. And once you understand foul trouble, you can understand how Miami had to change their strategy to long-range shots and how they were unsuccessful. One more thing you need to know before we get to the conclusion is that Brooklyn held the momentum as the playoffs, which is the key part of the season, drew near. Brooklyn won by limiting and overcoming Miami's offense and thus increased momentum. You eliminated the jargon, clarified the expert understanding, and now we have an impactful takeaway that your audience can understand. Any questions? All right. Last thing I want to do before we get to the technical presentations is talk about some content enhancements, some ways that you can spruce up your presentation as you're preparing for your technical presentations next week. And I'll just generate some ideas about things you could do to make it a little more exciting. We'll break this into the beginning, middle, and end of your presentation, as we have in the previous classes. So let's talk about the beginning. Remember, we said this is an important opportunity when you have your audience's attention. They're focused on you. You can really give them an impactful message at that point. A couple of things you can do. I'll throw out some ideas, and I want to hear from you as well. Tactics. You could give them a startling statement. Did you know that 80% of people run out of retirement savings before they die? Most people run out of money. Startling, isn't it? Well, think about investing in my project. Narration or anecdote? Maxine, what's a narration or anecdote?
Speaking through what it is that you're presenting.
Alright, narration or anecdote is a short story. Alright, you may start off your presentation that way with a little, let me tell you about this short story that will intrigue you. You could use a quotation. Teddy Roosevelt used to say, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. Let me explain how that relates to presenting conclusions that people care about. Question. You can start off your presentation with a question. Intrigue your audience that way. Get them to think about the answer to that question. Any other ideas you all might have for how you could powerfully start the beginning of your presentation?
Maybe like a survey.
Survey your audience, alright? What's going on with you and your retirement savings? Let me have a show of hands. It's a good way to engage your audience at the beginning. Alright, as you get into the middle, the meat of your presentation, you're going to explore, support your conclusion. You're going to give some facts, some opinion. You may throw in some humor. You may throw in a longer story. You may want to use some examples to drive your point home. And as you end your presentation, here are some tactics you can think about as you're getting ready for your presentation next week. Signal the ending. Remember we talked about that last week? Don't just end, signal the ending. Because when you signal the ending, what does your audience do?
Pay attention.
They pay attention. Alright, I'm about to end, Fatty, so maybe you can pay attention. I'm about to come to the important point. You're going to miss it if you're not paying attention. Signal the ending. Restate the main point because your audience is like, wow, this is the end. What's going on here? refer back to the opening. Maybe you asked a question at the opening, answer that question at the opening. Think about a vivid, positive picture. Also think about next steps. You might have worked really hard to get your audience to understand the content, and you want to think about how you can get them to do the next step that's important to you. Any comments or questions on that? Alright, so these are some things you can do to spruce up your presentations that you're going to give next week. That brings us to, let's talk first about the technical presentations that you're going to do next week. See if you have any questions on that. Let me grab my syllabus. Alright, so I would like you to choose something that's important to you, something that you would like to make a presentation about, that contains some technical aspects. Throw together some PowerPoint slides, and come up with a 5 to 7 minute presentation. Approximately 10 to 15 slides. Can be anything. Similar to the presentation you gave last week, whatever you want to present on, I would more than likely be open to it. Take a look at the grading rubric. That's probably the way you want to include, or things you want to include in your presentation. Think about a template design, and just choose a template that reflects your theme. Customize with a useful header or footer. Maybe you put the topic, maybe you put some sort of point of reference in your header or footer. Concise, uncluttered headings, which means those headings, the bullet points. Visual picture, find a picture, put it into your slides. I want to give you some practice with manipulating a picture and thinking about the best way it can fit in with your presentation. Visual graph, please use one graph that you encounter as you're researching this topic or that you already know about this topic. Please create the graph yourself. So have a set of data and then use the Excel or the PowerPoint feature to say put this into a line graph, put this into a pie graph. And don't just take a picture of it and paste it in. Actually have the graph be dynamic. So when I scroll over it, I can see that it references real data. Does that make sense? Slide design, use entrance effects. There's animation effects. Remember I mentioned entrance effects, a good way to keep your audience from getting ahead of you. Use some of those. Think about a powerful opening, powerful closing, thoughtful content throughout, and just think about the organizational plan of your stuff. The places people usually lose points, they forget to customize, they forget to do an actual graph. Sometimes they'll just find a graph and paste a picture of it in. Sometimes people will forget to do the animation effects. So just do all those and think about how that can supplement your content that you're trying to present. Any questions on that? Okay, so I will quickly go over then the team graph presentations, and then I will give you a good chunk of time to work on that. Let's see, we are at 7:40, so let's shoot for 8 o'clock, 8:05, we will start our presentations. Yeah, shoot for 8 o'clock. If we need a few minutes, yeah, let's shoot for 8 o'clock. We'll start our presentations. And what I want you to do is simply what I asked in the syllabus for this assignment. Analyze this given data, present a valuable, insightful conclusion to your fellow MBA candidates. Think about how you want to frame this conclusion. Think about using some of the techniques we talked about, like the take method for presenting a graph, jargon elimination strategy, you don't want to throw a bunch of words we don't understand. Maybe think about transitions. The key things for this assignment are presenting a clear conclusion, and also I would say using the take method to present a graph. Do you all have any questions on that before you take a few minutes to get your final stuff together? Alright, and let's see, you three are a team, right? And then you two are a team? Yeah, and you two are a team?
Yeah.
Alright, does anyone need an extra team member for the next 20 minutes? Huh? Alright, why don't you, yeah, Venetia, why don't you join these two?
Okay.
And then so we'll have 3 presentations. Okay, so let's take a break, do whatever you need to do, and let's plan on being ready to give me a file at 8 p.m.
How many slides?
1 or 2.
Would you say the conclusion? She can say the conclusion maybe?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Advertising spending has grown substantially across the industry from August 2008 to August 2009. You can see the 13 industries increased spending by $60 million
I thought about it very simply.
2009.
Alright, so
Now, my classmate Dave.
according to what we're saying, Newman? What's the first?
So it's kind of,
Yeah, well, I'm gonna delete
we gotta talk about it, but the next slide is basically the delta. So it's this is the green minus the purple. So it's the dollar increase.
Right.
Between the two, right? So that's what this chart showing. So it's showing that they all increased. And then stated it was a $60 million increase, and that's what this graph represents. It represents how the $60 million is split up. And of those, of the 13 industries, there were 4 industries that comprised the bulk of that, which was the entertainment field, the public services, the telecom, and web media, which comprised 40 million out of the 60 million in sales. However, they all increased substantially.
So the transition would be, whatever you're talking about, so, now this is.
The dollar. Let's talk about
So that you're pretty much kind of doing beforehand, so you introduce them. Rather than, I think we introduce it, and introduce it together.
So the thing about it is, there's 3 of us instead of 1. This slide is saying one thing, it's saying that they're all increasing, right? And then my slide is saying, yeah, they're all increasing, but it's due to 4 main ones. So I'm thinking now he might say that we're not being consistent with the conclusion, like, because now I'm saying that's my only concern. And then the next slide kind of goes that way too. I don't know. So she's going in, her conclusion is social media is increasing industry-wide amongst all of these, 13 industries. and she's saying that it increased by $60 million, and now it's in just 1 year, and now it's over $100 million. Then she's gonna say, you know, Dave will talk about how this, you know, how the $60 million is worth on this 13 industry. And then I'll jump in, thank you, I will talk now about how $60 million is split up, and 13 industries from 2008 to 2009. Y-axis shows the dollar amounts, and our x-axis again is the 13 industries.
Even though on the previous slide it did increase, even though I had it, even though on the previous slide you saw that each industry did increase. They all did increase, however, these were the ones.
No, I think that's.
They were the drivers.
Yeah, exactly. People are trying to remember.
It just, I'm not sure if
Okay,
it's not 100% consistent,
Right.
but you know, it's a take.
So who wants to introduce it?
So then the third slide, and I don't know,
We're here to discuss marketing trends within social media and why it's good to invest in social media spending. Title of the graph. We're going to talk about an advertisement spending on social media sites by industry. And as you can see here, all the different industries, you can go ahead and take a look at them and go through each of them individually. And how much spending is, or the rate of spending for each of the industries. And this is our range, from 0 to 30 million. And we're talking about 1 month within the years of 2008 and 2009. As you can see, there's significant growth over each industry in 1 year, about 50%. Okay. I want to actually introduce Amanda, and she can elaborate a little bit more on what this means.
Hi guys, we believe that we should invest into social media because currently over the industry it shows that there's a 50% increase, and we believe that this is because it increases the customer engagement, it increases consumer base and decreases the cost of marketing. I'm going to pass it over to Letitia so that she can further elaborate on these 3 points.
Good afternoon. I'm going to explain the 3 points that Amanda pointed out. It increases customer engagement because you can track and learn what the customer is looking for. What do they want to buy? So through social media, you can see what data that they gravitate towards. So if you advertise, with your advertising, you can see which way they'll rather go. Decrease cost of marketing because you eliminate the money you spend on circular discounts. Also, social media is more cost effective, and you can reach the masses all at once. It increases your customer base because you can reach customers you were never able to reach before. So at once you can reach millions all over the world, as opposed to before social media, you had to send out coupons and you probably will only reach the United States. So in conclusion, we suggest that you invest in social media to increase customer engagement, decrease your cost of marketing, and increase your customer base.
Thank you.
Good job. Excellent. So comments for this group about how they presented their conclusion and how they used the data to support that conclusion. So what was their conclusion?
Why you should invest in advertising through social media.
Yeah, okay, so I thought it was a really clear and well-presented conclusion, why you should invest in social media, and you had some specific points, and you handled the transition between speakers well. It was very good.
this is usually just a little bit more of an informal, sometimes group will just send one person up, but you all had it, you had it prepared. So I would say great, clear conclusion and very well presented conclusion. So really nice job on that. I would say the thing that you could have done better, that aspect, is that I don't think your graph really supported your conclusion. The graph or the data didn't really support it for a couple reasons. One, because it's data from 7 years ago.
Do we know we're in seven, do we
Yeah,
know
that's
we're
what I'm
today?
saying.
Or do we think that maybe we're talking as of 2010?
Right.
I thought maybe
It
we were
is-
talking as of 2010.
Okay.
That's, yeah, that's.
Okay.
'Cause sometimes you get old data and you're just like,
All right. Fair point. Okay. If this were 2010, then it would not be old data. The instructions were, though, to present a valuable, insightful conclusion to your MBA classmates. So, because we are your MBA, they are your MBA classmates. You know, they're not going to get in a time machine and say this would be valuable if this were 7 years ago. But I do see your point. The other reason I don't think it really supported your data is because we can't see it very clearly, and we see. I think if you wanted to make this argument, you might have put it all together and just showed the increase
Okay, overall.
overall. And there you would have seen a huge difference in 2008 and, between 2008 and 2009. This is like I guess you're right. If I look carefully, if I work hard, I can see that the red line is bigger than the purple line. But even still, all the different industries confuse me. And I'm like, well, wait, what if I'm in this industry? What if I'm in that industry? So I think if you wanted to make that conclusion, I think just a different graph, and it would have been perfect.
But how are we addressing the different industries? Because what if she's within the software industry and you're within telecommunications?
Well, but you didn't address the different industries. Your conclusion was everyone should invest in social media for these 3 reasons, right?
because it increased 50% industry-wide.
Yeah. So if you wanted to say that, then I would have just used a different graph and it would have been perfect. If you wanted to address each of the individual industries, then you could have done that.
Done it differently.
Okay, okay,
Thank you.
yep, got it.
Good work. All right. All right, let me.
You don't even use the graph.
What's that?
You don't use the graph.
You just pick the side, like actually you pick just travel industry.
Oh, they could have picked one?
Yeah.
Yeah. You could have done that. I guess that'd be another way. Or they could have picked one with the large percentage increase. They could have picked this one and just used that one. I guess that could have been. I may have given them a hard time about not using
Oh, sorry.
I'm gonna give them a hard time about not using the whole data set. Alright, do you have a volunteer group for next? Alright, where's?
Oh, I put it in the first one.
Oh, Mercy. You put it right in there? So you should be able to click forward now if you want. Yeah.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. Tonight I'm gonna present the graph of 1 month advertisement spending on social media sites by industry. These are the 13 industries spending from 0 to 30 million. As evident in this graph, social media advertisement spending has grown substantially across the industry from August 2008 to 2009. The 13 industries increased spending by $60 million and now is over $100 million in 2009. Now Dave will go more into detail on how the $60 million increase from 2008 to 2009.
Thank you, Danelsa. I will now go over the $60 million increase from 2008 August to 2009 August and how it's divvied up. The y-axis again is the dollars increase spent, but now it's from 0 to $18 million, and again, these are the 13 industries that we were looking at before. The takeaway from this graph is that there's really 4 driving factors into the increase of the $60 million in the year. The 4 driving factors are the entertainment industry, the public services, the telecom industry, and also the web media industry. We will now hand it over to my teammate here who will go over the percent increase from August 2008 to August 2009.
So, I'm presenting the percent increase between 2008 of August and 2009 of August. As you can see on our y-axis, we have 0 to 1,000%, and we have the same 13 industries that we have been talking about. As you can see, that these all, from the first slide, these all have doubled over the year that that was used in the social media industry. However, we have the entertainment industry, which is an outlier, which is the leading, has almost doubled and 90 times fold in percent increase throughout that year. And the travel industry has also doubled in that social media industry. And so David is going to go back and bring it all together for us.
So this graph showed that we did have a couple of outliers, but in general, the industry as a total actually increased their sales on average 250% across the 13 industries, which basically the takeaway from that is that the social media spending and advertising industry-wide has increased substantially from August 2008 to 2009. Thank you.
Good, good. Comments for this Kim? That's good. Oh, thank you. Comments for Team Danilsa, David, Venetia? What was their conclusion?
The percentage increase.
The percentage increase?
Over the 3 industries.
Over the 3 industries?
Yeah.
Okay, the percentage like it increased percentage-wise over 3 industries? Okay. Do we have any other assessments of the conclusion? Fatih? What was the conclusion of that last presentation?
Actually, I was thinking my presentation, sorry.
Understandable. Okay, I think the conclusion, it seemed, it was definitely hard to understand what the conclusion was. I think that's the most important takeaway from this presentation. I think it seemed that they were leading up to the very end when they said, let me take it back to, when Venetia said, let me take it back to David, and he's going to sum it all up, and we're like, oh, conclusion. And I think what he actually said was that it has increased significantly over this year, which I guess is fair enough. So if that was your conclusion, I think there could have been, let's see what we got, there could have been a different way to present it. And is that how you all would summarize your conclusion? What would you say your conclusion was?
Just overall based on the 3 graphs that we presented,
you can see that industries have more than doubled over the last year, or over the year, between 2008 and 2009.
Industry spending has more than doubled? Okay, was that what you said, when you huddled up and said industry has more than doubled, industry spending has more than doubled over the last?
We try
year?
to summarize all three graphs that we presented, just say in general, a general statement. The takeaway from all three graphs is that it's trended increase in spending from 2008 to 2009. That's the main
Okay,
commonality.
Okay, alright, so it said a couple things. One, if that was your conclusion, what might have been a better way to present that graphically? If the 5 people not involved in the presentation have a comment on that. Or even you all, as you reflect on that, would there be a better way to present that conclusion that everything has increased over this 1 year?
Well, you said, what you recommended to us by showing each year just as one and one.
Yeah, just showing each year. Say the whole dollar is increased, and you could even, in that case, have said the whole percentage-wise. You know, this is the dollar increase, this is the percentage-wise increase. So social media is increasing. To call that a valuable, insightful conclusion, I might have wanted to scratch the surface a little bit more. Like, why has it increased? What does it mean for my company? I would look for something like that. So I would say it's not the strongest conclusion to start with, and if it were your conclusion, I would have recommend maybe presenting it that way. The other thing I'll say about this is that you seemed to fall into the trap that most groups fall into, and I even told you this last week, that I'll tell you and you'll still fall into the trap because there's so much interesting stuff going on here. First we started with a bit of an overview, and then David actually said the 4 drivers of this increase are these industries. And then the next slide, like, whoa, all of a sudden what's going on here? We've got entertainment, and Venetia even said that she even used the word outlier. So it's like, okay, what's this huge thing that's drawing my attention? It's just an outlier, I shouldn't pay attention to it. So I think there was so much stuff, like what's going on? Are you gonna comment on these 4 industries and how they play into the conclusion? Or are you gonna tell me something about the percentage increase? Yeah, does that make sense? And then I would say, I want to say something about the very first slide too. Like I don't know that it was necessary. What do you think, Danielle? So was it necessary to overview this slide? What was your objective when you were thinking about presenting this? What was our
Well, we try to present something in general, and then on the other 2 charts, like dividing to the dollar increase chart, and then the percent increase chart. So.
Okay, and I really love this exercise because it's so easy to fall into these traps of trying to present too much, and it's a great exercise for us to reflect on and say, well, this was the conclusion, but it wasn't clear and could have been more clear with a slightly different diagram. So my comments are that this was just a general overview that didn't really have a purpose. It didn't really give us information that was helpful, and we needed it because when we get to the next slide, we're hit with a possible conclusion of 4 different industries, but we're left hanging to an extent of what that means. And then we've got percentage increases, and then it's wrapped up with a very general conclusion that is distracting because of all the information that we've seen. Would you all agree with that in the audience? All right, but good job wrestling with all this data. And like I said, I don't mean to be critical. I say thank you for sort of diving into these areas and allowing us to think about how we would handle the nuances of percentages or dollar increases. So let's move on to. Do you have a comment, Maxine? No. Let's move on to the last presentation. Alright, so this is, we've got the laser pointer if you need it, and the forward and backwards. Let me get it set up here.
Hi guys. Actually, we're not gonna compare whole data. We just pick the side and travel business, travel industry and entertainment industry, because these two are getting more involved in social media. You've got to pay attention. And first of all, social media is going to play a role in travel business and highly, but it's not a new thing. It has been used by travelers to share their experience also, and people share their videos, photos, and blogs in the social media, and it's very important. There is some facts that more people between the age of 35 and 65 spend time on social media and watching television, and there's some numbers, and average 51 minutes a day people spending on social media, and I think it's a very important for the travel business. And because 97% of millennials post about their travels on social media, and it's getting higher. And also statistics have also shown that almost 64% of travelers post their holiday reviews, and more than 52 travelers are largely influenced by social media when it comes to travel planning as well. Image sharing, blogging, video tours, custom Google Maps. And also, how to use social media for travel industry? Let me explain to you. Become a brand that people connect with, and offer the right deals to people, and show your expertise as a travel agent. What do some companies do? For example, JetBlue provides prompt and personal service, and pertaining to its new attraction, ticket discount, and festivals. But Bootzone shares best travel deals and intriguing travel tales and articles. Finally, having a social media presence is essential for the travel industry, but that's not enough. There's something to do more. And the most important thing is remain connected with the potential customer on a regular basis. And Gökay is going to explain us to entertainment business and social media.
Hi everybody, this is Gökay. Today I'm going to explain entertainment on social media. Social media has become a new form of advertisement. 88% of consumers increasingly use Facebook, Instagram and Twitter to supplement their traditional entertainment experience. Consumers spend more time on social media platforms on a weekly basis than watching TV, viewing movies, and even more than listening to music and texting. According to this table, the entertainment companies spent more money advertising on social media in 2009 than 2008. There are 3 reasons for increase. First, advertising have capabilities to produce videos that keep people watching. Many people are watching increasing number of videos on social media. The other reason, consumers spend more time online. Digital marketing is becoming industrial standard, and company cannot afford to get behind. So more people are going to online business. With this shift, business have to ensure they are top of the search result on search engine and local directors. So digital marketing providers increase insight into customer behaviors, allowing better customer engagement. Smart marketing can understand how their customers interact online and gain contextual knowledge. In conclusion, as you know, social media is playing significant increase in advertisement spending in the entertainment industry because of changing habits of consumers. Thank you for your attention.
Good, good, good. Let me have that. Excellent. You guys went above and beyond, for sure. Some good slides, good information. And how long did you spend on that? 2 days. 2 days? All, like the whole 2 days? Okay. Well, maybe you can use some of those slides for your technical presentation that you're gonna use next week, so you
It will
can.
be not, it's actually PowerPoint we try to improve.
Okay. Well, so I didn't want you to have to spend 2 days, but I hope you got a lot out of it. And maybe you can pull some of those slides and you do your technical presentation. This is actually more involved than some technical presentations that you're gonna do in 2 weeks. But let's talk about it. Now they didn't use graphs. In fact, I think this was the only graph that you used, right? And it wasn't, so they took the data and then they took their interpretation and they said, let's take it one step further and explain why social media is playing such an important part in these two industries. Any comments on how effectively they did that? What worked? Why did it work? Anything they could have done better? Besides spend 3 days instead of 2? Amanda?
I think what works is the pictures, and as they were speaking, I feel like every picture kind of made a vivid, like, I guess, picture of what they're saying, like, going to their points.
Uh-huh.
And I liked it was entertaining to keep me posted.
Pictures are good, they entertain their audience. And a picture serves the same purpose as a concise bullet point, it just guides your audience. So your audience has a guide of what you're talking about, and to Amanda's point, what's left for you is just for us to focus on you and hear you talk about it. Any other comments? So, yeah, I mean, really good stuff. You definitely get the prize for putting more effort into this particular assignment than I've ever seen. Maybe you can add to this, for your technical presentations, of course you'll do individually, but if you completed this together, you can share parts of it, I guess that's fine. You can add to this some graphs.
Yep.
And I think some graphs would help you in a couple ways. They would help clarify your points.
Okay, you compare,
Yeah, and they also just might focus you a little bit and say, this is the one thing I want you to take away, and give us some indication of what that is. And also you can use the take method and use the method, use various method of presenting those numbers. Like seeing some numbers, I think, would support this, so you could maybe use parts of this and do it with your technical presentation in 2 weeks. Any other comments before we wrap it up? Good job, good presentations tonight, I hope you got a lot out of the material. So we're on spring break next week, so have fun at the beach, Malibu, Florida, wherever y'all go these days. And then I will see you in 2 weeks from tonight to do your technical presentations. Look forward to seeing you then.
Thank you guys for letting me go through. No problem.
Thank you.
I've seen.
Just submit it when you can. Yeah, if you need a couple days to sort it out, don't worry.
Just I called the help desk, but didn't solve the problem.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Oh well, just if you need a couple days, that's fine. I'll submit it.
I can send you.
Okay. That's it.
Right, I submitted that. So the last week was
Oh, yeah, the oral presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you missed the oral presentation.
Right.
Yeah, yeah, it's
Neyin
fine.
olacak abi? Neyin olacak?
You're gonna give a quick oral presentation.
Neyin olacak?
If you want to do it, you can, we'll find a time for you. But, I don't actually grade on content, or I can't grade on alcohol. Did you watch the video? Alright, see you next week, see you in a couple weeks. Here's spring
I need
break.
to submit
Guys,
Alright.
Hey guys, I'm
I
gonna
will
get
do that in place of.
Yeah. No, you're right.
For some reason, I wasn't passing it.
Where's the pass? Is it?
Alright.
Good night, dude. See you.
Oh my god, I know, 15 times, I'm dying.
Interested in the
7 minutes, I'm trying to practice at home.
for
I tell my kids to sit down and listen.
How old?
They're in conclusion. So the ones that are home,
past due?
14 and 10.
I know, I know this.
Oh, really?
Yeah, this.
Probably says you have 5 out of 5. Check your grade on it.
It's older.
Really?
Oh gosh, thanks. Alright, ladies.
Your grade?
Have a good night.
So go to my grades. Good
Good night,
night, see you in a
good
couple of weeks next week. You were brilliant.
Thank you so much.
You got 5 out of 5.
Thank you.
You betcha.
Alright. See you in 2 weeks.
All right. Good night, Amanda.